Imagine waking up to headlines that shake the entire auto industry. The world's first self-powered electric vehicle doesn't come from Silicon Valley or Germany or Japan. It comes from Africa. A sleek machine that doesn't just run on a charge, it powers itself. No plugs, no waiting at stations, no grid dependency. And suddenly, the company most threatened by this breakthrough isn't a struggling automaker, but Tesla itself. It all started quietly. In a small lab far from the glare of international media, a group of engineers had grown tired of the limits of conventional EVs. Charging infrastructure was slow to develop, batteries were expensive, and entire regions were excluded from the so-called electric revolution. So, they asked the unthinkable, what if the car could sustain itself? What if it didn't need the grid at all? Months of failed experiments gave way to a prototype. The first test drives were modest, on narrow roads with skeptical onlookers. But the car kept running. And then kept running more. Hours turned into days, and the battery gauge barely moved. Rumors began spreading, whispers of a machine that defied the biggest problem of electric vehicles. At first, it was dismissed as a hoax. But soon, footage emerged. A silver EV circling roads endlessly, headlights glowing, never once stopping to recharge. When the news reached international outlets, the shockwaves were immediate. Investors scrambled for details, engineers demanded data, skeptics accused it of trickery. But every fresh video, every new witness account, told the same story. Africa had unveiled a car that could rewrite the rules of energy. For Tesla, the timing couldn't be worse. Its empire was built on the charging network, on batteries, on the idea that range anxiety was a problem only it could solve. Suddenly, a group of outsiders had cut through the problem entirely. What happens to a trillion-dollar industry if charging becomes obsolete overnight? Whispers began in corporate circles. Leaked emails suggested Tesla executives were already sending teams to investigate, offering partnerships or perhaps buyouts. But in Africa, the inventors resisted. They saw their creation not as a luxury product for the elite, but as liberation. A chance for villages without power grids to leapfrog into the future. A way to transform not just driving, but living. Yet with each passing day, the pressure grew. Articles appeared questioning the science, hinting at dangers, trying to cast doubt. Energy giants quietly pushed narratives of safety risks. Anonymous investors approached the team with staggering offers, if only they'd sign away the rights. Still, the car kept running, and the people kept watching. And then came the turning point, the decision to take it global. The first shipment of self-powered EVs landed in America. Hidden in containers, tracked only by insiders, these vehicles rolled onto US soil like a secret waiting to be revealed. Early buyers swore their cars hadn't been plugged in for weeks. Word spread fast. Social media lit up with shaky videos showing dashboards locked at 100%, cars driving across states without ever stopping. Suddenly, Tesla wasn't just facing competition, it was facing an existential threat. But this story is still unfolding. Because as more cars hit the roads, as the evidence becomes undeniable, the battle is no longer just about who builds the best EV. It's about who controls the future of energy itself. Behind the scenes, the conflict was already intensifying. In boardrooms from California to Berlin, executives watched the viral clips with unease. Tesla's analysts compiled reports, warning that if the claims proved true, the company's entire charging network, a system worth billions, could become irrelevant overnight. Energy corporations, equally threatened, began lobbying politicians. The whispers grew louder. This technology had to be stopped, or at least contained. Meanwhile, the inventors remained defiant. They refused private buyouts, rejected offers that would bury their work in the vaults of corporations. Instead, they doubled down on transparency, inviting independent engineers and journalists to witness the cars firsthand. Those who came left stunned. They described dashboards that stayed full no matter the distance traveled, engines humming with an almost otherworldly quiet, and a faint glow under the hood, something no one could fully explain. Yet the pressure mounted. Online campaigns suddenly flooded the internet, claiming the cars were unsafe. Anonymous sources pushed stories of potential radiation risks, battery instability, even fire hazards. None of it was backed by evidence, but the goal was clear: sow doubt, slow momentum, protect the status quo. For a while, it worked. Some consumers hesitated, governments stalled on approving large-scale imports, and skeptics latched onto every rumor. But then came a moment that changed everything. The inventors announced a global reveal, a live demonstration that no amount of spin could erase. The location was set, a massive stadium in Lagos. The plan was audacious. Thousands of witnesses, millions more watching online, a car running endlessly before the eyes of the world. On the day of the event, the atmosphere was electric. Crowds poured into the stands, chanting, waving banners that read "The future belongs to Africa." Journalists filled the press box, their cameras trained on the track below. The inventors walked out calmly, standing before the silver EV gleaming under stadium lights. With a single nod, the driver started the car. The vehicle surged forward. Minutes passed. Then hours. The dashboard camera streamed live to giant screens above, showing the battery at 100%, unwavering. Skeptics sat in silence, staring. The car powered the stadium lights, the sound system, even a massive digital clock counting the hours it had been running. Nothing faltered. Nothing stopped. The crowd roared. The internet exploded. For the first time, the impossible had been proven not in a lab, not in leaked clips, but before the eyes of the world. And in that moment, it was no longer just about an invention. It was about power, who owned it, who controlled it, and whether the future of energy would belong to the people or to those who feared losing everything. The fallout was immediate. Within hours of the Lagos demonstration, news networks across the globe interrupted programming to replay the footage. Anchors stumbled over words like historic and revolutionary, struggling to capture the weight of what the world had just witnessed. Analysts compared it to the Wright brothers' first flight or the discovery of electricity itself. Hashtags surged, timelines overflowed, and for a moment it felt as though humanity was standing at the edge of a new era. But in capitals thousands of miles away, alarm bells rang. Governments convened emergency meetings. Defense officials asked whether the technology could be weaponized. Economists warned of collapsing oil markets, destabilized power grids, and nations losing leverage built over decades of energy control. And in corporate towers, panic spread. Charging networks, battery giants, oil conglomerates, they all saw their business models crumble in real time. Tesla, in particular, faced a crisis unlike any in its history. Share prices wavered as investors demanded answers. Could Tesla adapt, or would it be overtaken by innovators once dismissed as outsiders? Elon Musk remained silent for days, fueling speculation. Was Tesla preparing to fight, to partner, or to sabotage? Meanwhile, on the streets, excitement drowned out fear. In cities across Africa, parades erupted spontaneously. People painted murals of the self-powered EV, children waved miniature models, and for the first time in generations, the continent was not seen as a follower of technology, but its leader. In America, crowds gathered outside dealerships, begging for access to the mysterious cars that never needed charging. Videos spread of EV owners driving coast to coast without once stopping, dashboards glowing proudly at 100%. The inventors, now global figures, found themselves in a storm they couldn't fully control. Offers arrived from countries promising protection, infrastructure, even citizenship. At the same time, threats escalated. Anonymous messages warned them to stop before accidents happened. International agents tried to infiltrate their team. And yet, instead of retreating, they announced something even bolder. The next generation of their technology wouldn't just power cars. It would power homes, cities, entire nations. That declaration shattered any illusion of calm. The self-powered EV had already shaken the auto industry. But a world where homes no longer needed grids, where factories ran without fuel, where governments lost control of energy supply, that was an upheaval no one was prepared for. The stage was set. On one side stood inventors with a vision of liberation. On the other stood some of the most powerful corporations and governments in history, determined to maintain control. The technology was proven. The people were inspired. But the forces gathering against it were immense. And as night fell across the globe, one truth became clear: the battle for the future of energy had only just begun. Within weeks of the Lagos reveal, the clash went public. Energy giants filed lawsuits in multiple countries, demanding investigations into safety violations and unverified science. Governments that had once cheered innovation suddenly tightened regulations, insisting on endless testing and certifications. News outlets, some funded by fossil fuel interests, began running stories that painted the inventors as reckless, even dangerous. But for every attempt to slow momentum, the movement only grew. Grassroots campaigns surged online, with millions rallying under the slogan, "Power belongs to the people." Independent scientists released their own studies after examining the cars, confirming what the inventors had claimed all along. There was no hidden fuel source, no trick. The vehicles were genuinely self-sustaining. And yet, the resistance escalated. Strange incidents began to occur. A shipment of the vehicles bound for Europe mysteriously vanished at sea. One of the lead engineers survived what was reported as a random accident, though many suspected it was no accident at all. Drones were spotted circling the inventor's facility at night, and leaks suggested certain governments were already racing to replicate the technology in secret labs. Tesla finally broke its silence. In a dramatic press conference, Elon Musk admitted the invention was impressive but warned it might be too good to be true. Still, behind his words was a tone of unease. Insiders whispered that Tesla's R&D division had been ordered to reverse engineer the tech at any cost. Other automakers followed suit, terrified of being left behind. Meanwhile, ordinary people refused to wait. In African cities, drivers offered rides to anyone who wanted to witness the cars firsthand. In American suburbs, homeowners begged dealers for pre-orders. In Europe, activists demanded their governments support the technology instead of suppressing it. What had started as whispers was now a global roar, and no boardroom or parliament could silence it. The inventors, knowing the danger they faced, made their boldest move yet. They announced they would release the core blueprints to the public if any attempt was made to kill the project. If corporations or governments tried to bury it, the knowledge would spread across the world in hours, unstoppable, uncontainable. It was a checkmate move, and everyone knew it. Either the world accepted the future, or it risked losing control of it entirely. And so, the battle lines hardened. Oil barons, automakers, and politicians on one side, desperate to preserve a crumbling empire. On the other, a wave of people, ordinary citizens, inventors, dreamers, fighting for a future where energy was free, limitless, and untouchable. The world was no longer asking if this technology would change everything. The only question now was how far the powerful would go to stop it, and whether they would succeed.